You blame external factors for what happens in your life. This habit serves a hidden function: to preserve the notion that you do not participate in the creation of your own problems. For centuries, the traditions of secret brotherhoods have taught the exact opposite. The outside world does not act upon you, it reflects you. Your internal state determines your external circumstances. Thoughts and emotions emit vibrational frequencies. This frequency is not contained within the body. It radiates outward and influences the material reality around you. You do not react to the external world. You create your own reality. The Hermetic principle, as within, so without, encodes this dynamic. Everything that you experience corresponds to something that you carry internally. The teaching demands absolute responsibility for everything, without exception and without condition. No event escapes this logic. Not accidents, not betrayals, and not losses. Few people accept this premise because it completely eliminates the role of the victim. But I need to ask you, do you have the courage necessary to assume total authorship of your reality?
There is an axiom that spans millennia, encoded in Hermetic manuscripts, transmitted in the Initiatic schools of ancient Egypt, and that remains, until today, one of the best-kept secrets about the nature of reality. The Kybalion, a text published in 1908 and attributed to the three initiates, records this principle with surgical clarity. As above, so below, as below, so above. And it completes, as within, so without, as without, so within, so within. The second of the 7 Hermetic principles, the Principle of Correspondence, establishes that there is a harmony, an agreement, and a correspondence between the various planes of manifestation. What occurs in the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. What inhabits the interior manifests in the exterior. What you carry inside of yourself projects itself, inevitably, onto the screen of the world that you experience. The Initiatic fraternities transmitted this teaching for centuries in closed circles. The tradition of Kashmir Shaivism, on the other side of the world, arrived at the same conclusion by independent paths. The world constitutes a direct reflection of who you are. Two traditions separated by continents and cultures are converging toward an identical understanding. The teaching proposes a radical inversion of what most people assume to be obvious. Common sense operates under the premise that you are born into a world already formed, already structured, and that your task consists of navigating this external world in the best way possible. You react to circumstances. You adapt to the environment. You respond to the events that happen to you. The principle of correspondence completely inverts this logic. You do not experience a world that happens to you, but rather a world that emanates from you. Each situation, each encounter, and each external circumstance represents a projection of your internal state. External reality does not possess existence independent of the consciousness that perceives it. It arises as a direct manifestation of what you carry inside yourself. This understanding dissolves the separation between observer and observed. You and your world form a unique system, where the boundaries between interior and exterior reveal themselves to be illusory. When you transform your internal state, the external reflection necessarily modifies itself. The mirror does what mirrors do. It reflects faithfully what is before it. If the exterior mirrors the interior, then what you see in the world reveals what exists in you. When you encounter hostility repeatedly, the mirror shows something about your own internal field. When you attract abundance consistently, the reflection indicates the frequency that you emit. The world does not lie. The mirror does not distort. It simply reflects, with absolute fidelity, exactly what is before it. And this is the mistake that most people commit their entire lives, attempting to modify the reflection directly. People spend decades fighting against external circumstances, battling against the mirror, without realizing that the change needs to occur at the source. You do not correct your appearance by adjusting the bathroom mirror. You adjust what the mirror reflects. The same principle applies to the totality of your experience of life. The Kybalion warns that this principle takes 5 minutes to learn, but a lifetime to master. The simplicity of the formulation hides deep layers of practical application that demand years of refinement and integration. Agreeing with the principle while your life is going well is easy. Remembering it when you lose your job, when a relationship ends, when illness arises, or when the money runs out, that demands another level of mastery. In those hours, the temptation to blame the exterior becomes almost irresistible. The mind seeks external causes, identifiable villains, and unjust circumstances. And in the moment that you yield to that temptation, you forget the principle and return to being a victim. The initiatic training exists precisely to install this knowledge in layers that are deeper and deeper within the consciousness, until it becomes an automatic reflex, no longer a theory to be remembered, but a natural mode of perceiving. When this happens, you stop fighting against mirrors. You direct your attention to the only place where genuine change can occur, the interior. But how exactly does the interior project itself onto the exterior? Through what door do your internal states convert themselves into external circumstances? In 1960, a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz published a discovery that shook everything he believed about human transformation. After years of reconstructing disfigured faces, Maltz realized something disturbing. Many patients, even after perfectly successful surgeries, continued behaving as if they still carried the same deformities. The face had changed. The mirror showed a new image, but something inside of them remained untouched, something that determined, with much more force than physical appearance, how they experienced life. Maltz called this the self-image, and what he discovered about its functioning reveals, in precise terms, the mechanism by which the principle of correspondence operates. The self-image, as Maltz defined it in his book Psycho-Cybernetics, represents the perception that you maintain of yourself, the internal portrait regarding who you are, what you deserve, and what you can accomplish. This portrait does not necessarily correspond to objective reality. It corresponds to what you believe to be true about yourself. The central concept that Maltz introduced establishes that the self-image functions as a psychological thermostat. A thermostat regulates the temperature. You set a point and the system works automatically to maintain the environment in that range. If the temperature falls, the heater turns on. If it rises too much, the cooling kicks in. The system always pulls back to the established point. Your self-image operates by the same principle of automatic regulation. If you see yourself as someone who earns a certain value per month, your internal system works to keep you in that range. Earnings above the established point trigger subtle behaviors of self-sabotage. Drops below that point mobilize extra energy to restore the balance. The thermostat does not evaluate if the defined point is adequate or not. It simply regulates to keep you where you subconsciously position yourself. This mechanism of regulation applies to all areas: relationships, health, professional recognition, the capacity to receive affection, and tolerance for success. Each dimension of life possesses an internal configuration, and that configuration determines the range of results that you can sustain. Results far above or far below the self-image generate discomfort, and the system works to eliminate that discomfort, returning to the familiar point. Maltz documented, in the initial chapters of his work, another fundamental discovery. The human nervous system does not distinguish with sufficient intensity between a lived experience and an imagined experience. To the neurophysiological apparatus, visualizing something vividly and experiencing something in fact produce responses that are virtually identical. Athletes who visualize movements activate the same neural patterns that they would activate by executing them physically. People who relive memories in detail trigger the same hormonal reactions as the original event. The system responds to the internal representation, regardless of whether its origin is memory, imagination, or direct perception of the environment. This characteristic of the nervous system explains why the self-image possesses so much power over external results. The images that you maintain internally about yourself are not neutral content stored passively. They actively configure the thermostat. Each time that you visualize yourself failing, your nervous system registers an experience of failure. Each time you imagine yourself being rejected, your body processes a rejection. The accumulation of these internal representations establishes the regulation point. The Hermetic teaching about the correspondence between interior and exterior finds its operational mechanism here. The Kybalion establishes that the within determines the without. Psycho-Cybernetics maps how this happens through a self-image that automatically regulates your behaviors, your perceptions, and your emotional responses to maintain coherence with the internal portrait. A technical analogy clarifies the process. Your thoughts function like a film inserted into a projector. The light that passes through the projector represents your consciousness, the vital energy that animates your experience. The film represents your self-image, the set of beliefs, emotional memories, and repetitive patterns that you maintain about yourself. The screen represents your experienced life, the world that you encounter. Without film, the light projects only uniform brightness, potential without specific direction. When you insert a film, the light passes through those images and projects exactly that content onto the screen. The projector does not select or judge. It projects faithfully what you place before the light. The direct implication: you choose the film. Consciously or unconsciously, you determine which images the projector is going to transmit. Images of capacity, connection, and deservingness project corresponding circumstances. Images of inadequacy, isolation, and scarcity project with equal fidelity. The mechanism does not discriminate content, it only executes the projection. Most people have never examined the film that they carry. This film was installed progressively by the family, by the school environment, by formative experiences, and by interpretations that the child made of events that they perhaps do not even remember consciously. And this film continues running, projecting the same scenes repeatedly, while the person asks themselves why they always encounter the same patterns. Maltz dedicated Psycho-Cybernetics to developing techniques to modify this internal film. The book sold more than 30 million copies because it offered a systematic method to reprogram the self-image and, consequently, reconfigure the thermostat that governs results. The crucial point that connects Maltz to the Hermetic teaching: the self-image does not influence reality in a vague or abstract way. It literally structures the field of possibilities that you are able to perceive and access. When you see yourself as an attractive person, you emit non-verbal signals, make behavioral choices, and interpret responses from others in ways that confirm this vision, and people respond to this frequency. When you see yourself as someone destined for failure, the same mechanism operates in the opposite direction. You do not attract what you desire, you attract what you are, or more precisely, what you believe yourself to be. The self-image functions as a filter that selects among all the possibilities available in the environment, those that correspond to your internal portrait. Opportunities incompatible with your self-image become literally invisible. You do not perceive them, you do not recognize them, and you cannot take advantage of them even when they are before you. This knowledge about the power of self-image did not arise in isolation in 1960. Maltz rediscovered, through systematic clinical observation, a principle that the Hermetic schools codified millennia ago. What differs is the language and the mapping of the mechanism. Ancient wisdom declared that the interior molds the exterior. Maltz's contribution was to identify the self-image as the specific vehicle of this molding, and this knowledge about self-image and Hermetic correspondence arrived at us through a lineage of very particular transmission. The way that this wisdom was preserved and passed from generation to generation reveals something essential about its nature, and about the conditions necessary so that it truly integrates, instead of remaining as mere intellectual information. The Kybalion opens with a precise description of how Hermetic knowledge crossed the centuries. In the introduction, the three initiates explain that in ancient Egypt there existed masters who transmitted wisdom only orally, from lips to ears, in restricted circles of selected students. Nothing was written. Nothing was published. The knowledge passed from master to disciple through direct contact, in sessions that could last for years before a single principle was considered genuinely assimilated. This methodology was not accidental. The Egyptian Hermetists understood something that modern education frequently ignores. There is a vast difference between information and integration. You can read the 7 Hermetic principles in 15 minutes. You can memorize them in an afternoon. You can explain them to another person the next day. But that does not mean that you understand them. It means only that you have stored data. The oral transmission forced a completely different rhythm. Without texts to consult, the student depended entirely on the presence of the master. Without the possibility of rereading later, each session demanded total attention, and the master controlled the flow, revealing the next fragment only when he perceived that the previous one had been digested, questioned, applied, and finally incorporated. The initiatic process described in the Hermetic traditions followed a specific format. The knowledge arrived in an extremely condensed form, frequently a single sentence, a single principle, sometimes just a word. This seed was planted in the consciousness of the initiate. And then the years of cultivation began. 5 years. This was the typical period dedicated to the integration of each central principle. 5 years so that, as within, so without, ceased to be an interesting phrase and became the natural mode of perceiving reality. 5 years so that the understanding would descend from the head to the body, from ideas to reflexes, and from theory to automatic action. Why so much time? Because genuine wisdom does not enter the mind intellectually all at once. Human consciousness possesses layers. The superficial layer, the intellect, absorbs concepts quickly, but the deeper layers, where the emotional patterns, the ingrained beliefs, and the automatic behaviors reside, these resist. They were formed over the course of decades and do not reconfigure themselves with a weekend reading. The initiatic training worked systematically through these layers. The principle was presented. The student thought he had understood. Then life tested this understanding and revealed that the understanding was only superficial. The student returned to the master. The principle was represented with new nuance. The student perceived dimensions that he had not captured before. New tests arose. And thus, cycle after cycle, the understanding deepened. The sessions of transmission occurred in environments charged with symbolism, properties belonging to members who occupied positions of considerable influence in society, although they remained completely unknown to the general public. From the outside, these mansions did not differ from other luxury residences. From the inside, they guarded extraordinary riches, works of art of inestimable value, and rare objects accumulated over generations. This configuration communicated a principle even before any word was spoken. True wealth remains invisible to superficial eyes. Whoever passed by the street would see only one more big house. Whoever entered would discover unimaginable treasures. The same applies to human beings. Most people carry internal riches that were never recognized, neither by others nor by themselves. The format of the ceremonies reinforced the hierarchical structure of knowledge. The initiate sat in the center of a circle formed by the elders. The mentor, frequently called uncle as a code of respect, conducted the session and introduced the other members when appropriate. The circular arrangement symbolized that the knowledge did not come from a single direction, but emerged from the collective field formed by those who had already walked the path. The induction into the fraternity could occur very early. There are records of initiates who entered into training at 6 years of age, and whose process of formation extended for subsequent decades. This early entry was neither cruelty nor eccentricity. It corresponded to the understanding that certain patterns are installed more easily before the mind crystallizes into rigid habits. A child of 6 years has not yet consolidated a limiting self-image. They have not yet accumulated decades of internal evidence about what is possible and impossible. Their psychological thermostat is still malleable. Introducing the Hermetic principles in this phase means formatting the consciousness from the foundation, instead of trying to reformat a structure already hardened. The contrast with contemporary education is revealing. Today, information circulates instantly. You can access any teaching in seconds. Books that before demanded years of searching now appear with a click. And yet, genuine transformation remains as rare as it always was, perhaps rarer, because the abundance of information created the illusion that knowing about something equates to embodying that something. The Initiatic method operated in the opposite direction: deliberate scarcity of information, abundance of time for integration. Each fragment of knowledge was treated as a precious seed that demanded specific conditions to germinate. Haste meant waste. The master, who revealed too much too soon, was not being generous. He was sabotaging the development of the student. This understanding of the time necessary for integration connects directly with the next fundamental principle transmitted in the Hermetic schools. Because among all the teachings codified in the Kybalion, there is one that explains why internal transformation affects the exterior, why the self-image molds circumstances, and why the mirror responds to what you carry inside. This principle establishes that absolutely everything in the universe, matter, thought, emotion, consists of vibration operating at different frequencies. The third Hermetic principle recorded in the Kybalion declares, "Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates." This formulation, codified millennia ago, anticipates what later investigations would confirm through increasingly precise instruments. The notion that vibrational frequency constitutes the base of reality did not arise in laboratories of the 20th century. It traces back to the Initiatic schools of ancient Egypt, transmitted orally long before any instrument could measure atomic oscillations. The principle of vibration establishes that absolutely everything in the universe vibrates at specific frequencies. Crystals vibrate, metals vibrate. Each atom in each substance maintains a unique vibrational pattern that functions as an energetic signature. There is no truly solid matter in the way common sense assumes. What you perceive as solidity represents density of vibration, particles oscillating so rapidly and so close together that your senses interpret them as compact mass. This Hermetic understanding finds direct correspondence with observations that identified all matter as particles in constant motion, each with measurable vibrational characteristics. The difference between a rock and a gas does not reside in one being material and the other immaterial. The difference is in the vibrational rate. Lower and denser frequencies manifest as solid matter. Higher and subtler frequencies manifest as gases, light, and phenomena that the physical senses cannot capture directly. The Hermetic teaching expands this understanding to include thoughts and emotions as vibrational phenomena. When you feel something, joy, anger, fear, love, you emit a specific frequency. Each emotional state possesses a distinct vibrational signature, and this frequency does not remain contained within your body. It propagates outward, affecting the field around you, influencing people and circumstances in ways that most people never consciously perceive. The human brain functions simultaneously as a transmitter and receiver of frequencies. You do not only emit your internal states, but you also pick up states emitted by others. This explains phenomena that common sense discards or ignores. Have you ever entered an environment and immediately felt that something was wrong, even without any visible evidence? Have you ever thought of someone seconds before that person called? Have you ever picked up the hostility of someone who was smiling politely? These are not random events nor statistical coincidences. They are manifestations of the receiving capacity of the brain operating on frequencies that ordinary attention does not monitor. Government programs in various countries have documented extensively over decades phenomena of mental transmission between individuals. The phenomenon exists. The mechanism involves vibrational frequency. A particularly revealing line of research involves the effect of directed intentions on the structure of water. Water exposed to specific emotional states presents alterations in crystalline formation when frozen. Intentions of love and gratitude produce symmetrical and harmonious crystals. Anger and hostility produce chaotic and fragmented formations. The water responds to the vibrational field to which it is exposed. The direct implication of this discovery hits the human body. Approximately 70% of your composition consists of water. Your thoughts and emotions are not confined to some abstract region of the mind. They literally reconfigure your physical composition at every moment. Each emotional pattern that you sustain alters the aqueous structure of your cells. You are continuously reformatting your own body through the states that you maintain internally. The principle of correspondence, as within, so without, gains a new dimension when combined with the principle of vibration. The interior does not influence the exterior through some mysterious and inexplicable mechanism. The influence occurs through frequency. Your internal state emits a vibration. That vibration propagates beyond the limits of your body, and the environment responds to that frequency in the same way that water responds to directed intentions. The concept of the butterfly effect illustrates how minimal perturbations propagate consequences through complex systems. A butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon affects atmospheric conditions on the other side of the planet. The movement seems insignificant at the point of origin, but it initiates a chain of influences that amplify themselves throughout the system. Your thoughts operate by the same principle. Each thought constitutes a vibration. Each vibration affects the field around it. You never think in isolation. Each mental state that you sustain participates in a vibrational network that extends far beyond your individual body. Your frequencies contribute to the collective field, just as the flapping of the butterfly's wings contributes to global weather patterns. The implication is both liberating and disturbing. Liberating because it reveals that you have real influence over your reality through managing your internal states. Disturbing because it eliminates any possibility of neutrality. You can't help but emit. As long as you're alive, you vibrate. As long as you vibrate, you affect. The only choice available is which frequency you're going to sustain, not whether you're going to participate in the field. The Hermetic teaching insists that this understanding about vibration leads to the inevitable conclusion. You carry responsibility for what you emit. There is no moral responsibility in the sense of guilt. It is operational responsibility in the sense of consequence. What you sustain internally produces effects externally. This is the mechanics of the system, and from this mechanics derives the next principle transmitted in the Initiatic schools, a principle that most people resist with all their strength because it completely eliminates the possibility of positioning oneself as a victim of circumstances. The second great teaching transmitted in the Initiatic fraternities can be formulated in a single sentence. Assume 100% responsibility for absolutely everything that happens in your life, without exception and without condition. This is the complete instruction. There is no fine print. There are no disclaimers. 100% means 100%. The immediate reaction of most people to this principle is violent rejection. The mind fires objections even before the sentence finishes being processed. How can you assume responsibility for a drunk driver who ran a red light and collided with your car? How did you create an illness that appeared apparently out of nowhere? How did you attract a betrayal that you never imagined possible? The mind seeks exceptions, extreme cases, and situations where the responsibility clearly belongs to another. This resistance is predictable, and it is precisely the obstacle that prevents transformation. While you maintain the possibility that some things happen to you without your participation, you preserve the victim mentality. You might not consider yourself a victim in general. You might even see yourself as a proactive and responsible person in most situations. But if there exists a category of events, any category, where you are a passive receiver of external forces, then you have not yet understood the principle. Maxwell Maltz, in Psycho-Cybernetics, documented the mechanism by which this responsibility operates. In the chapters dedicated to the servo mechanism and the negative self-image, he demonstrates that the human mind functions as a system of search and confirmation. The servo mechanism does not distinguish between positive and negative goals. It simply works to confirm the image that you maintain of yourself, regardless of whether that image is favorable or destructive. If you carry internally the image of someone who is betrayed, your servo mechanism works to confirm that image, not in a magical or supernatural way, but through concrete mechanisms. You select partners with a higher probability of betraying. You ignore warning signs that contradict your self-image of a betrayed person. You interpret ambiguous behaviors in the direction that confirms your expectation, and you create relational dynamics that increase the probability of the feared result. The same goes for any repetitive pattern in your life. People who consistently face financial problems carry a self-image related to scarcity. People who repeatedly encounter conflict carry something internal that the servo mechanism seeks to confirm. The repetition of patterns is not bad luck. It is the system operating exactly as it was designed to operate. Maltz called this a psychic scar when the negative self-image is derived from traumatic experiences. The original experience might have occurred decades ago. The person might not even consciously remember the formative event, but the image remained engraved, and the servo mechanism continues working to confirm it year after year, situation after situation. The principle of absolute responsibility derives directly from this understanding. If your servo mechanism works to confirm your self-image, and if your self-image determines the patterns that repeat in your life, then you are the creator of those patterns. Not the conscious and intentional creator, but the creator nonetheless. The phrase, the 5-second miracle, describes the instant transformation that occurs when you genuinely embrace this perspective. 5 seconds is the time necessary for the internal shift. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how did I create this? The first question positions you as a receiver. The second position is you as an author. This change of question completely alters the relationship with any circumstance. Instead of fighting against the event, you investigate your participation in it. Instead of seeking external culprits, you examine the internal pattern that the event reflects. This stance does not guarantee immediate understanding. Sometimes the connection between self-image and circumstance is obvious. Other times it remains obscure for years. What the stance guarantees is openness, and openness is the prerequisite for any eventual understanding. The Initiatic training emphasizes that you do not need to understand how you created a certain situation to assume responsibility for it. Sometimes the pattern was established through beliefs formed decades ago in contexts that you barely remember. Sometimes the dynamic involves aspects that transcend the current life. The understanding may demand considerable time. But closing yourself to the possibility of responsibility closes simultaneously all the channels through which understanding could arrive. There is a reformulation that facilitates the adoption of this principle. The universe does not do things to you. The universe does things for you. Each experience, including those that seem adverse, serves some purpose in your development. This purpose might not be apparent at the moment of the event. It might take years to reveal its significance. But the willingness to consider that there is a purpose, that you are receiving exactly what, on some level, you summoned, that willingness changes everything. Absolute responsibility is not a weight, it is a liberation. While events happen to you, you are at the mercy of forces that you do not control. In the moment that you recognize your creative participation in everything that you experience, you recover agency. You might not be able to change the past, but you can examine and modify the self-image that produced that past, and thus influence what will come. But here arises a paradox that confuses most people who approach this knowledge. If you are responsible for everything, if you create your reality through self-image and vibrational frequency, then mastering these principles should confer immense power. You should become capable of manifesting anything, controlling all circumstances, and molding reality according to your will. This is the expected result, and this is precisely the result that does not happen. Whoever approaches this knowledge generally carries a specific expectation. If the interior determines the exterior, if the self-image configures the thermostat of results, and if vibrational frequency molds circumstances, then mastering these principles should confer extraordinary power. The capacity to manipulate reality according to your will. The control over the conditions of your life. The ability to manifest any desire through the correct management of internal states. This is the logical expectation, and this expectation is completely wrong. The first Hermetic principle recorded in the Kybalion, the principle of mentalism, declares, "The all is mind, the universe is mental." This formulation establishes that everything that exists emerges from a universal mind, an infinite consciousness in which each individual consciousness participates. You are not separate from the universe, trying to manipulate it from the outside. You are an expression of the universe, experiencing itself through a particular perspective. When this understanding integrates genuinely, not as an intellectual concept but as direct perception, something unexpected happens. The urgency to change external conditions simply dissolves, not because you gave up, not because you resigned yourself, but because the very need for control reveals itself as a symptom of an illusion that you left behind. The illusion is separation. While you perceive yourself as an isolated entity fighting against an external world, control makes sense. You need to defend your territory. You need to guarantee your results. You need to force reality to conform to your desires. This stance generates constant tension. the tension of one who is in permanent war with circumstances. The principle of mentalism dissolves the base of this war. If everything emerges from the same universal mind, and if you participate in that mind, then there is no other against whom to fight. What you find out there is a manifestation of the same consciousness that operates through you. Fighting against circumstances equates to fighting against yourself. Victory is impossible because there is no real adversary. The Initiatic teaching points to a result that contradicts common expectations about power and manifestation. Whoever integrates these principles completely does not become an avid manifester. They do not become a controller of reality. They do not develop the capacity to mold circumstances according to personal whims. What emerges is something radically different: deep humility and serene peace. This peace does not look like resignation. Resignation carries bitterness, the feeling that you wanted something different but were forced to accept what came. The peace that emerges from genuine integration does not contain bitterness. It arises from the recognition that what you have represents exactly what you created. There is no error to correct. There is no injustice to combat. The mirror is functioning perfectly. From that recognition, the fight against circumstances loses meaning. The resistance to what exists now reveals itself as resistance to oneself. The desperation to manifest something different disappears, not because you suppress the desire, but because you realize that you already possess everything that your current consciousness can sustain. Wanting more before expanding internally is asking the thermostat to maintain a temperature for which it is not configured. What remains when the fight ceases? Presence. You inhabit the current moment feeling good. You do not feel good because the conditions are favorable, but you feel good regardless of the conditions. The connection with the universal flow replaces the effort to control that flow. You stop swimming against the current and discover that the current was always going exactly where you needed to go. This peace transcends ordinary intellectual understanding. You can understand the words that describe it without ever experiencing it. It does not emerge from convincing arguments or logical proofs. It emerges from a visceral certainty, not confidence based on evidence, but direct knowledge that dispenses with external confirmation. The certainty that everything is fine, has always been fine. It will always be fine. The initiates who complete the training describe a sensation of unity with the universe that does not manifest as power over things. It manifests as harmony with all things. The difference is fundamental. Power over implies separation. You here, the object of power there. Harmony with implies participation. You and the universe moving together, without friction, without opposition. The complete initiatic training does not produce people who manage to manifest luxury cars and perfect relationships through creative visualization. It produces human beings who are serene, who have lost the need to desire, control, or change. They simply exist, connected to what is, present where they are in peace with what life presents. Each moment becomes sufficient in itself, not as an intermediate station for a better future, but as a complete expression of life happening now. The external appearances, money, status, achievements, recognition, lose the power to determine the internal state. The thermostat is no longer configured for happy when conditions improve. It is configured for present and connected regardless of conditions. This is the final paradox of the mirror code. You begin studying how the interior molds the exterior, hoping to use this knowledge to improve your circumstances. And when the understanding matures, you discover that you no longer need to improve anything. The mirror is perfect, always has been. The only thing that changed was your capacity to recognize the perfection that already existed. All change begins with understanding your role as a co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We have developed a set of audio tools to help you access this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and obtain immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments, "It made sense to me,"